Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark, sporting my brand new Ass Waffle t-shirt from Joe Magician's Threadless shop. It's lovely. You should go get yourself one. Enough plugging him, though. I am delighted to finally be getting back to the I Know That Nerd series. It's one of my favorite things to do on the channel. And, of course, this week I am joined by the one and only yolkboy from Radio Westeros. So everyone say hi to yolkboy. I'm sure most of you know who he is already. Doesn't really need an introduction. I'm also going to change the layout. This is the one I always prefer. Should have done that before we started, but oh well. So hey yolkboy, and welcome to the channel.
Thank you. I'm very flattered you've invited me here, and I look forward to a couple of hours of nerd chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get started, I want to tell you how I became aware of you as a content creator.
Okay, let's do that.
And I was thinking about that this week, and I was trying to remember. I cannot recall if it was episode 1 or episode 2 of the Radio Westeros podcast that I found you and Lady Gwen. So it was either the Sansa chapter or the Mercy chapter, but way back in 2014, and I've been following you guys ever since. I'm on again, off again patron of yours. Not currently a patron, but you know how finances get sometimes. But you guys have always done fantastic stuff over there, and I hold you and Lady Gwen in very high regard for not just your fantastic videos and the theories and stuff that you put out, but also for the way you've engaged with the fandom. You know, you didn't seem like you ever let it go to your head.
Oh, that's nice to hear. You know, I think that I don't think it should be about people's egos making this kind of content. You know, I think that the hero worshipping, if anyone, should be at George, and I sort of don't like that element that can arise sometimes in this sort of fandom that funnels off. And I just, you know, I feel very privileged to have any kind of fan base, if you can call it that. And I'm just so flattered by the fact anyone would want to listen to me at all. So thanks for that story of how it started. I'm curious, how did you hear about us? That's one thing I always like to ask people, you know, because there's many different ways people roll up on our shores.
Yeah, so it was 2014, so I don't have the best memory of it, but I think you popped no, actually I'm fairly certain that I found you with your episode 2, which is the Elaine chapter. Is that right?
I think it was just Sansa in general, but there was probably a lot of Elaine in there.
Right. And I think it's because the Elaine chapter had just dropped.
Right.
And I was reading an article about it, probably through Twitter, and then I went on YouTube and I searched, you know, Sansa, and there you were. It was definitely through YouTube that I found you, though. I was never one of the people on the message boards or anything like that. I didn't come to the deep fandom until about 2013, 2014.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, when we started the podcast, we didn't know, you know, really what to do. We were very naive. We just sort of jumped in head first. And I remember thinking, should I just put this on YouTube? I don't know if anyone will watch because we don't have videos. It's just the audio with a static picture. And, you know, now we've got a decent following and engaging with a lot of people on YouTube. So, you know, I'm glad we did it. And yeah, you say about forums, that's how I started.
Yeah, I know that is. You and Lady Gwen met on the forums, is that right?
Yeah, so I read the books I think after season 2, so maybe like 2012 or something. I forget, 2012, 2013, and I read the books and I just had this huge urge to get deeper in. I'd, you know, rarely felt this sort of power before of just being, I need to consume more of this. I'm not satisfied. So I did some Googling and realized that there's a community at Westeros.org, and that's where I jumped in. That was the place to be. Westeros.org. I think that was at the time the biggest community. Right. Perhaps Reddit is bigger now, but yeah, at that point, that's where everyone was flocking to, and a lot of people had the same idea. So they were going and posting theories, and this sort of nerd community was building up. And I didn't see it coming. I never set out to be part of anything, and all of a sudden, I felt like I had this great dimension in my life.
Yeah, you are officially a fandom big shot now.
Oh yeah, if you want to look like that, I don't like to think of it like that. I just I'm just someone that makes content, really.
So I've done a lot of I Know That Nerd over the year and nearly 2 years I've been doing it now, and all of my favorite content creators have more or less the same answer. I don't want to, it's not about the ego. I don't want to be the big shot. I'm just making videos about the thing that I love, and it's very heartwarming to hear that type of thing.
Yeah, I think nerds in general do have a sort of bit of a fragile ego from my experience, and you don't want to be rocked by suddenly thinking you're better than everyone else. It's not a good road to walk down, I don't think. So that's probably why content creators are like, just I really don't want my ego to grow.
Right. Well, and no, we're not going to go down that road. Sorry. But I will reiterate, my favorite content creators all seem to have that element of humility for what they're doing, and it's appreciated. Yeah. So,
sorry.
No, I do have a question though.
Yeah.
Yolkboy is not your given name. I'm not going to ask you your given name. That's for you to. But how did you sort of come up with the moniker Yolkboy?
Well, it's funny because when I did join the forum, a lot of people thought it was a Duncan Egg reference. And people still think that today, but they're kind of shocked when I'm like, no, it's got nothing to do with A Song of Ice and Fire. When I was a wee lad of about maybe 8 to 10 years old, I was fixated with a game on my Spectrum, if anyone had one of those Spectrums, and it was just an old computer game, and it was called Dizzy, and the character was an egg wearing boxing gloves, and you jumped around. It was like a sort of adventure puzzle thing, and I was just deeply in love with it, and it's just a hark back to that computer game, Treasure Island Dizzy. Look it up.
Nice. So a boxing egg.
Yes.
Somehow
it's became real. I loved it.
That's fantastic. I don't know that you could make a video game like that today. Maybe you could, with the boxing egg as the protagonist of the story. It would be fun to play, I think.
Yeah, they're a bit more complicated these days.
They
would have to be in 3D for a start.
Yeah, a 3D puzzle platformer starring you as a boxing egg. I like
Zelda style. I'd buy that one.
I'd play the heck out of that too. Speaking of which, I know you're a fan of the game. And I was digging around, and I know this because I follow you on Twitter, and something came up about video games, and you mentioned one of the best video games ever made, and I found this digging around in my attic.
Oh, Zelda. Is that the very original? Wow, the first.
The very first one.
Yeah, I remember. That flowing. Yeah.
I know you're also a video game fan from way back in the day, too.
Yeah. These days, I don't play so much, but I've always been a Zelda person, and I've probably completed. There's a lot of Zelda games, probably barring one or two. I've played them all and completed them all and enjoyed every single one. I think there is one or two that I'm missing, but I can't quite recall. This year, during the quarantine, I finally caved in and bought the Breath of the Wild game, and that was just amazing, so immersive. I just didn't want to come back to the real world, just playing it in the evening and just kind of wishing I could live in that world. It's very very addictive, and like I said, very immersive.
Right on. So I usually like to start these interviews going back as far as we can realistically.
Yep.
the title of the series is I Know That Nerd. I am, in fact, a self-identifying nerd.
Yeah.
But everybody's journey starts somewhere. When did you know that you were a nerd?
That's an interesting question. Can I go back and tell you about the sort of nerdy things that happened in my early life, and then let's go from left to right. When I was really young, my dad, he couldn't read very well, but he loved the Lord of the Rings. So he, in lieu of reading, he would make up stories as my bedtime story, and it would always start off, oh, Bilbo was in his little hobbit home, and he was sat down eating toast and sat by the fire when there was a rap at the door, and I would be like, oh my God. And he would take me through this story. There'd always be a journey through a forest and goblins and stuff. So he definitely, laid some groundwork for that sort of thing. I remember when I was a bit older, I became very obsessed with Flash Gordon, the movie. I don't know if you've watched that one.
I have seen it, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Star Wars and all sorts of things, and Dune and all sorts of, sci-fi movies that were doing the rounds in the 80s. And when I was a young lad, Flash Gordon was the one that I really connected with. I used to come home from school and just watch it like endlessly, like kids do, just came home and just put Flash Gordon on. I don't know what it was, because when I've tried to watch it as an adult, it doesn't really hold up very well. But
I watched it some time ago, and I was like, eesh, this does not exactly live up to my expectations.
Yeah, it probably doesn't hold up, but I probably wasn't as critical as that age. And just the fantasy and sci-fi elements, they obviously appealed to me. So I probably, and the obsessiveness of watching it over and over again. I mean, it's the same thing I'm doing as with A Song of Ice and Fire. Now I'm 40, so it just goes to show you don't change much.
Right.
But yeah.
So it's really been a part of your life, like your whole life, at least the nerdy stories.
Yeah, nerdy stories. And another thing I always liked stuff that was going on in America. Obviously, I'm an English guy, but I love
Wait
English.
a minute, you're English?
I love English stuff, and we can talk about that later. But when I was a young teenager, I was really obsessed with WWF wrestling.
Okay.
And I just couldn't get enough of it. I watched it all the time, and in the way that was quite nerdy. I used to know all the names of the wrestlers and follow them and know what they were doing and who the champions were, and that was like a little world which wasn't so far away from sort of fantasy. In a way, it is this little fantasy world that they've made in the ring there.
Yeah, I was never the biggest fan of wrestling, and to be fair, I used to mock people for it too, the way that some people do. It's not real, right? Well, what else is not real? Everything else I watch on TV. So that is not, and they don't wink at the camera to make sure that we know it's not real. So I eventually came to understand it as a sort of like a physically dominated soap opera in a lot of ways.
I'm really glad you said soap opera, because when you started that sentence, I was thinking, please say soap opera, because that's exactly what it is. Like, my parents would watch these kind of drama soap operas set in, English farms or whatever. But I preferred this sort of macho guys with muscles beating 7 shades of hell out of each other. I mean, I liked it when I thought it was real, and I think I liked it when I found out it wasn't real.
Yeah, I mean, which is not to say that I've never watched wrestling. It was never my thing. Although I have dated I dated a lady for a while who was a very big time fan. So I get it. I get it.
So maybe about the same time I was watching wrestling, I was very much into the kind of Nintendo, like we brushed upon. I loved Mario, and I think this is all connected. Fantasy worlds. they come in different forms, don't they? But there's a Mario universe, there's a Zelda universe, there's Star Wars. It's all acting on the same parts of our brain. And yeah, I got very much into Zelda, and apparently that was inspired by Tolkien, and you can really see it. You go on this adventure, it's got a narrative, you collect things, so it plays on that instinct that we've had since the caveman days to go out and collect various things that can help you on your mission. There's a bit of the hero's journey in there, maybe. And yeah, that stayed with me. Like I said, I'm 40 years old and I'm still playing Zelda now.
And rightly so, I think. Zelda not every game has been great, but most of them have been great. As long as you don't try to understand the timeline of what's happening and what happens when and where, you're great. Just take each game as it comes and you're going to have a good time with Zelda.
Do you mean the timeline between the different versions of the game?
Yes, because it's a whole branching multiple realities thing as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we want these worlds to hold up and be real. This is something in A Song of Ice and Fire when people look at the timeline and they really want it to make perfect sense, like a jigsaw puzzle. But of course, that's a limit. It's not real, and there are things that don't fit together because it hasn't really been thought out to the level that's sometimes you want it to have been. So I guess that's the case with Zelda there. They're probably just kind of making up as they go along.
Right. Oh man, Liz Kopic says Zelda multiverse. Oh yes, somebody out there has made a video about it, I'm sure, about the multiple branching timelines, and I feel like this one right here is one of the oldest in the timeline. But I can't remember. But somebody out there has done a much better video than I can try to give you a synopsis of here in the moment. So, yeah. So, but is there a point where you kind of looked inside and you said, you know what, I am in fact a nerd? Or was it just so gradual that you just woke up one day and said, oh, I have been this for a long time?
No, I just didn't realize. I was just obsessive about things. I didn't realize until A Song of Ice and Fire. I mean, then it was just obvious. But my whole life I've had these obsessions with certain things. I never really liked a million different things. I wasn't that kind of person. I'd find what I liked and just sort of, eat it until I got to the bone kind of thing,
Yeah, I gnawed away at it until there was nothing left, and then
exactly. That's what I was like. So I never realized, and then I guess looking back, I was a nerd, but there's a stereotype that a nerd is like someone that reads just sci-fi and fantasy and plays D&D since they were 4 years old, and that is one kind of nerd. But really looking back, I realize now that that's very sort of limiting, and there's many types of nerds. There's people that like sports. They nerd over statistics. Are you going to tell me that because they didn't they didn't play D&D, or because they read different kind of books, that they're not nerd? And that's why I didn't realize. I guess I always had a wrong definition, but now I see clearly that there are many types of nerd, and there are a lot of us, and we should take over the world because we're very powerful.
I think we already
so many of us, right?
I think we kind of have taken over the world a little bit. So I guess I have a different experience. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons at 9, so I knew from that point on I was a nerd. But I guess I was the more traditional 1980s Revenge of the Nerds style nerd.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a lot of value in reclaiming that word, and making it mean someone who gets obsessive about the things that they love, which definitely fits people like you and I, as well as those sports nerds or car fanatics or what have you.
Yeah, that's it. I prefer definitely a broader definition, and I think there's probably nerd elements to certain disciplines that are just not traditionally thought of as nerds. Like I said, the sports people that obsess over baseball stats and stuff. I mean, that's as nerdy as it gets, right?
Yeah, crunching the numbers and trying to analyze them and find out the real meaning of what that all comes to. I think you are correct.
I think maybe a common thread is we all want to sort of not necessarily live in another world completely, but we enjoy this escapism of being really focused on something. And well, I didn't think about all my problems today because I was reading A Clash of Kings, or the new Marvel movie really took me away out of myself. And I think nerds really connect with the idea of sort of healthy escapism through arts and creativity and so on.
Yeah, and those are fantastic pursuits as well, because of the mental benefits that you derive from, not just from the escapism, but from the exposure to new ideas. And which I think is, if you want to write your own stories or what have you, like we've got friends in the fan community who are huge nerds who are deep diving into the A Song of Ice and Fire stuff, who are doctors and nurses and lawyers and artists of every stripe you can think of. I'm not sure what you did professionally before you became a professional podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm imagining some of those like nerdy pursuits were useful to you in your day-to-day life.
Well, I have a background in sound. I qualified as audio, I think you call it audio engineer over here.
Okay.
So I was in my early 20s. I'd been to university, but I really decided I wanted to do. I couldn't put the idea down of getting into sound engineering. I was inspired by Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails. There's another obsession I had. In my late teens, I was very obsessed with that. It's the kind of thing he made, this sort of layered music where you could listen to it 100 times, and it had a great depth, like A Song of Ice and Fire or something like that. It had this re-listenable quality, and I just became entranced, and I really wanted to know how it was done, and I wanted to know how I could do it and understand the language of that discipline. So I did courses, and I learned to do it. And again, it was very nerdy. It's the people succeeding in this discipline are the people that stay up till 4 a.m. programming a synthesizer or learning the audio programs. And again, it's a nerd-led discipline, I think. And of course, that fed into Radio Westeros. So yeah.
Yeah, I can see exactly how that would feed into Radio Westeros, because I bet your sound quality is some of the best in the business.
Oh, thank you. We try and always wanted to utilize, you use what tools you've got available. So when we decided to do a podcast, it seemed obvious that we should try and make it a sort of polished product. Not that I would look down or anything like that on people that just sort of have a conversation or do that sort of podcast, but I just thought we may as well use the tools I've got and make a sort of polished version that seems to fit, what talents we had between us.
Yeah, and the two of you make a fantastic team, I must say.
Well, I hope so, because we're married.
Okay, and congratulations on that. Married, how long have you been married? A little over a year?
No, it's 2 years now.
2 years now.
Yeah.
I remember when it all went down. Congratulated you on Twitter, and it was I was very happy for you both. But I for one was like, wait a minute, they were an item? I had no idea. I thought they were podcast partners, and that's it. Your romantic life is none of my business, to be honest. I didn't take it as a slight that I didn't know, but I was very happy for you guys, and you guys, you continue to make fantastic stuff. You had the Doran stream yesterday. I didn't get to listen live. I had a lot of other stuff going on, prepping for another stream, but I listened to it this morning. It always amazes me how well the two of you work with each other. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we just had one of those rare moments in life where you really connect with someone. And, we had this great connection. We met at Westeros.org discussing our crackpot theories, and then it just grew from there. I started visiting whenever I could over the course of years, and then decided that we couldn't just live like apart for any longer, and I made the move and we got married, and it's great.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I missed you for a long time, buddy. When you were, I'm sure you were not allowed to work for reasons of immigration.
Yeah.
But I missed you, and I was so happy when you came back. Not that Lady Gwen's not great, but there is something about your sense of humor which comes across on Twitter really well. We have a similar sense of humor, I think, and I love it. Okay, I'm going to ask you this.
Yeah.
I popped over onto History of Westeros' live stream a little bit before we started this one. So their most recent Valar Rereadus stream, it was near the end, and Aziz wanted me to ask you about your love of Slim Jims. So,
I thought this was going to be some deep A Song of Ice and Fire question, right. And I'm like, oh no, I've got to explain
that here. We don't
Gornish conspiracy or something. Okay, Slim Jims. Well, in England, there's just one meat stick. It's called pepperoni. And I remember when I came to America, and I'm looking at all the differences from America to what I'm used to. And one thing is, like, the meat snacks here just own it. There's just so many. There's, not just there's the packets of the cured meat and the variety you have, and very spicy ones, and I love it. So I just started to say that it became a bit of maybe like an in-joke with myself that I was having, just talking about the Slim Jims. But yeah, I like Jack Links. To be perfectly honest, Slim Jims are probably the worst ones. I like the Jack Links.
Oh yeah, the truth is out. Slim Jim, yolkboy Slim Jim fascination is a front.
Well, no, I did enjoy it, but I just enjoyed posting about it quite a lot. So yeah, but when I talk about it, a lot of people engage and say, "Oh, in my region they have so and so meat sticks, and it's a real thing over here," and it's just a part of the American culture that you might not realize, but is quite unique. And another thing is the BBQ. Do you say it BBQ or barbecue? Do you just say barbecue?
It's barbecue here.
It's barbecue. Well, I've been eating these barbecue food, and wow, it's just out of this world. And I'm not sure that Americans realize that this is, almost like your national dish in a way. It's like something great to offer the sort of culinary world that you might not realize is special. But honestly, I've had some great barbecue, and it is very special. I love it.
Yeah, I am a native Texan. Barbecue is our sort of like official state dish. Texas barbecue is different than the barbecue you're going to get in other parts of the country too. So come down to Texas. I'll show you what real barbecue is like. I just offended everybody in St. Louis and North Carolina and Nashville, but that's okay. Real barbecue comes Texas. I said it.
I was watching a barbecue sort of documentary series called Something Chef BBQ on Netflix. There's a really good series if you look it up, and it sort of tells very human stories about barbecue chefs and where they came from, how they developed their style, and sort of showcases different styles. I thought that was a good one. You can look it up on Netflix. Chef's Table, it's called.
Okay. See, I've started a war in the chat section over barbecue. But that's exactly what I intended.
Well, I'm here to say that Massachusetts barbecue is the best. No, that's just the only one I've had.
Right. I was going to say, wait, what? Massachusetts, particularly not known for its barbecue.
Yeah.
But yeah, we derailed with barbecue for a minute. I love it. And it started with, we'll blame Aziz. He asked about meat snacks. There's a lot of people in the chat today. We got over 30 people watching live right now. You're a good guest to have for that reason. So you know what? Let's run through and just say hi to everybody who's here right now. I'm going to scroll up as far as I can and just start saying hi to people. So we've got, I love this name. Every time you're here, I love seeing your name. Flesh Bob Regular Pants is in the chat. Betsy, Mother of Starks, my real life mom, is here. She's here every week. She's an amazing woman. Love you, Ma. Jess Britbeck is here. Danny McKay, Ridiculous Ed Tollett, Liz Kopic, Aemy Blackfyre, AU Pack Mule, Jaded Redhead, aka Kelly, the Boat Queen. Ygritte Targaryen, Wheezy Squeezebox. Wheezy Squeezebox is the official timekeeper of Here Be Dragons. Anytime 420 rolls around, she is going to let you know. Mrs. Duncan the Tall, Sasa K, Kate Bertinsky, Micah Clark, Bernie L. Love you, Burns. Good to see you. Muhammad Akrat. I know I saw some other folks in the chat. Oh, Sanrixian here. Nice to see you, Sanri. Love you, sis. I'm not sure if I got everyone or not. Dancing Sean, aka Sean Pink, formerly of Radio or of History of Westeros. I'm going to do that a few times. I'm going to go Radio History of Westeros or vice versa, because honestly, those are my top three are, and I'm not in no particular order, History of Westeros, Radio Westeros, and then Joe Magician. You guys have been killing it for a long time. So I'm breathing rarefied air right now having you on my channel. I'm just so excited.
Oh, Joe Magician and History of Westeros. I'm in good company in that list.
You are, in fact. Sorry, John. I just
great people.
Yeah. So
never make lists because you just offend people, Stephen.
That's what I do. I offend people. Oh, I also see Sunflower Beth just popped in. Hey, Beth. Been a minute since I've seen you, sis. How you doing? Okay. Yeah, John is apparently just a figment of our collective imagination. That is a fact. There's a whole theory that goes along with that. Actually, speaking of theory, and I've been wanting to ask you about this for a long time. I think my favorite fan theory I've ever read goes something like Bloodraven plus Shiera Seastar equals Melisandre.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one.
Have you?
Yeah. What did you have a question, or just you want me to talk about it?
I mean, you can talk about it, of course, but I guess really my yes, this is the Mel theory. It is, in fact. I guess really my question is, how did you get to this point? Because like I never would have gotten there myself, but when you lay out all the evidence that you found along the way, I'm like, it's canon to me.
Oh, well, okay. So I've got to say that I really haven't. I sort of did it to death, this theory. I came up with it and then I talked about it quite a bit and I kind of got sick of it. So I really haven't thought about it for a number of years. I'm a little bit foggy and you might be able to have to help me out. So I think I was looking through some SSMs and I realized that Shiera Seastar, we don't know much or barely anything about her really from the text, but there's a couple of SSMs and George, for some reason, gave a really vivid description of what she's like. And I just recognize the words, and I compared it to the Melisandre description that you get in at the start of Clash, which is her introduction to the story. So he gives this really long, page-long introduction or something. And, a lot of the verbiage was so similar. So that's what got me off. set me off. And then I thought about Bloodraven, and yeah.
I mean, I love it. I think it makes absolutely perfect sense once it's broken down for you.
Yeah, I think that maybe there's a spanner in the works, maybe not, and I'll leave it for you guys to decide. You can look up the theory and look over it. But I think, wasn't it D&D said something about her being 400 years old, which of course would throw it out. But they say things and they're quoted. Nobody knows the context. In defense, nobody really know. Are they just throwing a figure? Did George just say, "Hey, she's really old," and they pick a figure out of their heads? You don't know for sure. So yeah, that's it. So it could potentially be the truth, and they were really relaying accurately what George said, or maybe not. You can't really tell, and it probably goes with other theories as well. Until we get the next book and see it on paper, it's difficult to sort of bring the word of D&D into it wholeheartedly.
Aemy Blackfyre agrees with you completely. D&D aren't a legit source. And, I'm not going to crap on them or anything, but I also do not consider what they say about the television show they made to be canon for the books.
Yeah, for a variety of reasons, some of which I said.
Right. But we can just leave it at that. Now, so everybody who's here to watch this already knows that you love A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that as much or as little as you want, but I'm sure there's a lot of other things out there that aren't A Song of Ice and Fire that you also got passionate about, as we were discussing earlier. Nerds just put their passion into things. And okay, when you were a kid, you liked the stories that your dad told, and you liked Flash Gordon, and you liked WWF wrestling. But as we get old, and that's fine. But as we get older, our tastes change, and they become, maybe we still love those things that we loved as a child, but we start to love new things because of the complexity of the stories that are being told.
Yeah.
Is there something that you run into along the way through your life that is even close to your love for A Song of Ice and Fire?
No, I mentioned 9 Inch Nails. They definitely had a huge effect. There's definitely a fandom that's a bit similar, where people are really obsessed with it. There's something about that music, and maybe the sort of dark backdrop of his sound design, which really gets people hooked, and people are making memes and all sorts of things about him. That was one thing. But another thing in the visual realm, I really loved, and still do, Twin Peaks. I love David Lynch.
Okay.
I can talk about Twin Peaks. So I think that I got to see Twin Peaks. I heard it was good. I saw it. I must have been about 19. I watched Lost Highway. That was the first David Lynch that I ever saw. I can remember I had a girlfriend over, and I thought I'd pick a film that we'd both like. So I was, I'll try David Lynch. And we watched Lost Highway, and neither of us knew what, we'd never seen anything like it. We sort of said, oh, what happened? What happened in that film? And I guess that was my first taste of sort of surreal, non-linear, confusing movies. But it wasn't until I watched Twin Peaks that I really fell in love with David Lynch. And I credit that to Mark Frost probably reining in some of his kind of wilder moments and turning it like we were talking about soap operas. I almost see it as a soap opera type thing, and I think it was made to be very bright. The way the colorings were, it is a very soap opera feel to it, to me, vivid. And David Lynch is obviously a master of color, and he just made the whole tone of the show look so sexy. And I loved all the characters. And yeah, I remember watching it and just getting really addicted. And for some reason in England at that time, series 2 wasn't available anywhere. So I watched season 1 and I was totally hooked, and I just couldn't wait to watch season 2. And it didn't come out until like my mid-20s. So I had like a 5-year gap where I was just waiting for season 2. But yeah.
Well, you got real familiar with season 1.
Yeah, I watched it over and over again. Yeah, it was. I think that world again is a bit like I see similarities with A Song of Ice and Fire. The characters are sort of larger than life. Like they're 50% characters that you could relate to, but 50% almost surreal or weird. And I see that in The Song of Ice and Fire, like the Hound. You know, you can relate to a lot of his stuff on a human level, but then there's something larger than life about him. And it has these characters like Ghost of High Heart, whereas Twin Peaks had the Log Lady. You know, these sorts of, they call them color characters that aren't really there for the plot. They're just there to inhabit the world and make it, a more wonderful place. And I think that Lynch and George are just masters at these sort of color characters and larger than life characters.
Well, somebody asked a really interesting question in the chat. First of all, Dancing Son says, good thing you didn't watch Eraserhead first, which we'll leave that for another conversation later. But Sasuke asked, what are your feelings on the David Lynch Dune?
So I rewatched David Lynch's Dune recently, and I think it just felt like there's something missing from it. You know, I just had that feeling that there's just something in the makeup that there was just missing. I couldn't really put my finger on it, and I wanted to love it. And there's elements that I loved, and bits of it were, very convincing, and a lot of it looked nice, especially for the time it came out in. But yeah, just a bit of a hollow feeling I had afterwards. And I recently watched the documentary on the other Dune, the first Dune movie that was going to be made in the 70s, and that was interesting. I watched that on Amazon, and it was interesting for me because all the creative people from the first Dune movie turned into the production crew for Alien, which is another universe I love. So it's an interesting sort of bit of trivia and a bit of provenance for both Dune and the Alien world, which I can talk about that as well.
Yeah, clearly you're a fan of cinema, at least on some level. I know that. So my regular co-host, I have two regular co-hosts. Nessie, the questing beast. She's working right now. She's a respiratory therapist, and she works every other Sunday. So she's not here. But my other co-host is John Webster from John Webster Film, and he does film analysis every week. And I'm sure he's watching right now. I'm sure he's rubbing his hands together and taking notes and being like, I want to talk to Yolkboy about this. And Laura Petrocelli agrees with you. She just said, did someone say Alien? Yes, please feel free to speak on it.
Yeah, Alien. I guess I like sci-fi movies for sure. When there's a new sci-fi movie, I get excited, and some of the best. I love Alien movies, and I love the claustrophobia and the darkness. And I think there's a part in Alien where the android character says, "Oh, the perfect specimen," and that just sums it up for me. And you've got this process where they implant an alien sort of down your neck, and it grows out. And the male characters, someone, this isn't my observation, but someone said it feeds into the sort of male fear of pregnancy or something. I thought that was quite funny observation there. Yeah, I love. I couldn't tell you which out of Alien and Aliens I like the most, but I also do like the new stuff, and I'm just really sort of nervous that they don't finish the trilogy. I don't always keep up with, movie gossip, so I don't know what the latest development is, but I really wanted a sequel to Alien Covenant. I like that movie. I know that the alien wasn't front and center, but the theme of creation was front and center with the David character and the other second David. And I loved it. Just, it's something we can all relate to. How did we get here? Why are we here? These, it's almost like a religious thing for people who don't believe in a sort of all-encompassing God. It's given you this explanation of the world being seeded, and I thought it was fascinating.
Dancing Sean just said that the latest gossip is an Alien TV series on FX.
Oh,
which, hey, that would be great.
What's FX? I'm just slowly getting to know all the shows.
It's a Fox-owned premium channel.
Okay.
But
so you have to. It's another subscription. Add it to the 500 other ones I've got.
I feel you on that, man. Between Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and all that. Although lately I may be able to let go some of those. This channel is turning into a Disney Plus shill channel. So between the Mandalorian, WandaVision, all the Star Wars and all the Marvel stuff is just going to take over here, I think. Sean says it's going to be on Hulu, so. And it's from David Hawley, who did Legion and Fargo. So yeah.
Does Sean know if it's related to the sort of Covenant timeline?
Well, as soon as he answers that, we'll let everybody know.
Yeah, I love sci-fi, and I guess I love space. I love just sort of zoning out and, oh yeah, we can talk about that. Okay.
This is where it's at for me right now.
Well, The Expanse, I'll tell you this, and you're probably going to hate me, Stephen, but
nope.
Okay, so when The Expanse came out early on, I tried to get on board because anything sci-fi comes on my radar, and like I said, anything in space. So, those details aren't out. Okay, so I heard about The Expanse, and I thought this is going to be up my alley, and I watched 5 episodes and tried to drink it in, and I just never connected with it. I thought that the setup was a little bit boring, and whatever hooks were there in play, you're supposed to a writer's supposed to lay hooks to sort of get you hooked in, and they just didn't work on me. I didn't feel hooked in at all. After 5 episodes, I just put it down, and then I came here and I said to my wife, Lady Gwyn, there's this Expanse thing. Maybe I got it wrong. I'm going to try it again. And I watched the same 5 episodes, had the same experience, and stopped at the same point. Wow. So I just watched the 5 episodes. I couldn't get past the setup.
Okay, I'm having hot flashes, but it's going to be all right.
Don't kill me.
No. No death threats here today. I like you despite your bad takes.
I tried, Stephen.
Everybody in the chat is trying to talk me off a ledge. That's really interesting because I think it's some of the best science fiction ever made. And I'll agree that it's a little slow at the beginning, but I was enjoying it from the get-go. And normally most people will say it was episode 4 that really set them off on loving it. But wow. I mean, there's no accounting for taste.
Yeah.
You like what you like and you don't what you don't.
I pretty much know that if I'd stuck it out, I probably would be loving it. I know that because I know my friends who love it. And, it's sort of a weird anomaly for me that I don't like it. I'm surprised, and I feel like I should like it. I think at some point I'm going to jump back in, but instead of going back to episode 1, I'll just go from where I left off, where it's 5 or whatever, and just plow through and get hooked in. I see people getting tremendous joy from this TV show, and I want to be part of it. I love sci-fi and space and meteorites and all the sci-fi tropes and elements and mining on the meteors. That just sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, but it's my show. It's not your show, so that's fine. But so Danny McKay asked, then, have you seen the space horror movie Event Horizon?
Yeah, I have. You know, I've seen that, but I was young, and I'm not just foggy on it. I probably couldn't tell you more or less anything about it, other than it was a claustrophobic sort of trapped in a spaceship type thing. Probably why you brought it up, given I was talking about Alien, right?
Yeah,
I'd rewatch it.
I've seen that film as well. I don't really remember it that well either. It was like experimental hyperspace, but it accidentally transports you to hell or something like that. Is that
I remember some sort of hell imagery that was going on for sure. Something like that. And I think, well, I'll tell you, now we're on the subject, my favorite movie.
Yeah, let's go there.
My favorite movie ever. I just think that it's the best movie. I don't think a movie is ever going to come along and sort of knock it off its perch, because I just love it so much. Is 2001 Space Odyssey. I've watched that movie so many times. I was totally, that's an addiction. I love Stanley Kubrick, and this is the best of the best. If I had to write a top 10, you know, the movies they'll be very close to each other, but first would be Space Odyssey by a margin, I think, ahead of stuff like The Godfather and Apocalypse Now and other sort of classics from that kind of era that I like.
Those are all three some fantastic movies, but I'm with you. 2001 was revolutionary for when it was made. Kubrick is a genius, I think. I mean, he's an insane, mad genius, but he's definitely, like, he's one of those filmmakers I want to watch everything he ever made, but I would never want to work with him.
Yeah, I think he tends to sort of use people a bit. I think I've watched numerous documentaries, not just about 2001, just about how he made movies. Yeah, I think that he sort of used people a bit, and, you know, didn't credit people and stuff. But I don't know. I'm not sure he's a bad guy or whatever. I think he was just very, very fixated with what he was doing. You know, he's very focused, and he had these enormous pressures on him to come up with the goods, and he had these huge budgets, and he had this very, very tiring way of working. He'd take 30 shots of the same scene, make people do it again and again for tiny differences, you know, just over and over. And I've heard the crew of Barry Lyndon just say it was just painful, you know, and he's at the center of that, doing that. All the actors are worn out, and he's just doing it all the time. So he's just very, very focused. I'm sure he was a super nerd, and yeah, his films are some of the best movies. They look so good, and what looks better than 2001? I mean,
nothing.
That's just amazing. Even when you see it now, like the first shot of the spaceships is still breathtaking.
That movie was what, 1968?
Yeah, 68 or 69, I think.
Yeah, so like we're talking about pre-Industrial Light and Magic days, because they were the ones that really sort of got to that point where things were looking more and more realistic. ILM with the Star Wars trilogy, but that was nearly a decade later. You know, up to that point, you're used to seeing saucers on strings, you know, floating across the screen. So yeah, I agree. Kubrick is a genius, and 2001 is a fantastic film. And it's one that, like, as a kid, I was like, why does everybody love this? But then even as, say, a teenager, I watched it, and I was like, oh, this is actually fantastic. And I knew at the time watching it that there was so much going over my head. Is this a film you revisit regularly?
Yeah, I'm due a rewatch, but I've seen it many times. I think the first time I saw it, I was like, Well, that was a bit slow because there's hardly any dialogue, really. I don't think there's any dialogue for like 40 minutes or something. So if you approach it like you approach a normal movie, like, oh, what's the dialogue going to be like? I hope it's snappy. You're going to be disappointed. It's slow. It's, it's very indulgent. I can imagine that people not liking it. But for me, honestly, the feelings it gives me are, again, almost religious sort of feeling that you're exploring God and stuff like that, just through sci-fi, a different kind of God, the aliens of the God or whatever. And it starts off 4 million years ago, and then it cuts to the space age just in one cut, the famous bone cut.
Mm-hmm.
That is just, it's unprecedented. It's just unbelievable that he told so much story in these 2 and a bit hours. And you've got AI and you've got sort of monkey people in the same movie, in the same part of the same narrative. It's insane how daring it was, and that Kubrick was afforded this budget to make this bonkers sci-fi movie. And the story is, when it came out, it flopped. All the reviewers hated it, and no one wanted to see it. And they were going to stop it at the cinemas, but they noticed that the late night screenings were getting more and more popular, so they kept it running. And it was all the the stoners and the people on LSD and stuff going to watch it, and the students kind of like late night, let's go and sort of trip out to Space Odyssey, where thinking of that scene where the colors are flashing and he's traveling through another dimension or whatever it is.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed, one of the major themes of that film is like, well, it's evolution, and that's what the obelisks represent, at least to some way. But I love the idea that there's a moment where a chimp is using a bone as a club right there at the beginning, throws it up in the air, and as you say, that's the famous bone cut. So there was a huge evolutionary jump from when we started using tools, and the next evolutionary jump isn't until we make Star Baby. It's sometime in the future. Well, in the past for us, because it was 2001. But yeah, I do love Kubrick. I think he's a genius, and 2001 is way up there. Aemy, we're going to get back to the question in just a minute. We've been going for about an hour right now. It's a good place to take a short break while I do the mid-roll and thank everyone, and we'll get back to it in just a second. So that being said, everyone, thanks for being here. We're having a good time talking with Yolkboy, but if you would do me a favor, I would thank you for hitting the like button, subscribing if you're not already subscribed. These things help with the exposure. Appreciate you. Also need to make sure I shout out my patrons. Our Patreon council is led by the High Council, including Lord John Bronsteen the Wise, Sixto Sounds, aka JP the Axe Grinder, and our alpha patron, this guy right here, Ridiculous Ed Tollett. Love you guys. Thank you so much for your support. And they are backed up by the lords and ladies of the realm, who are Lady Leaf Underhill, this lady right here, as well as Aemy Blackfyre, lover of poles, this lady right here. So thank you, patrons, for keeping the lights on over here. We really appreciate it. Also, come back next week to Here Be Dragons, where we will be talking about the end of season 5 of The Expanse. The season finale is Tuesday, and we will be discussing the back half of the season next Sunday. The Sunday after that, we'll be discussing 3 more episodes of WandaVision. And so I hope you'll come back and join us for those conversations. Yesterday, I was on my friend John Webster Film, his channel, this guy right here. And we talked about the fantastic film Pan's Labyrinth with a couple other guests who were on it. Well, his co-host, Aemy Blackfyre, was there, as well as Cecilia from Geeksteria, who is a native Spanish speaker. So she helped us get a lot of the cultural references that might have missed. But we had a great time talking about that film. So please go check that out. Yolkboy, what do you have coming up over there on Radio Westeros, or any other things you might be doing?
Okay, so work has begun on. We're doing a TWOW primer, we're calling it. The Winds of Winter, trying to get everyone in gear for when Winds comes out. Sadly, we sort of hoped there'd be some news by now, but yeah. Anyway, we're doing a primer to sort of refresh everyone's memory and get people primed up for the Winds of Winter. And our next episode is going to be a look at the Stormlands and Aegon or Fagon, whatever floats your boat. His journey and how that intersects with Arianne Martell. So we just did Dawn, so now we're sort of intersecting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Aye.
And that's it. Okay.
Yeah, and there'll be more. We do live streams to support it, so there'll be more live streams, more guests, more fun. Yeah.
Sounds like a great time. Unfortunately, a lot of times your live streams are happening while I'm playing my Dungeons and Dragons games, so I very rarely get to be there live, but I always listen after and love the content. Okay, so let's get back to it then.
There was a question, wasn't there?
Aemy had a great question. Yolkboy, are you a fan of any comics or adaptations of any comics?
Okay, I will say that I never really got into the sort of Marvel or DC, that sort of thing that a lot of my fellow nerds, I'll say, were sort of brought up on. I don't relate to that. I don't know if it's just because I was in England, but among me and my friends, we just never went there, and it never sort of got imprinted on me at a young age, and I never really. I watched the movies, I never really did that. But one sort of comic book or graphic book that I like is the Scott Pilgrim, with the adaptation of
good.
You like Scott Pilgrim? So
I love the film. Yes.
Oh right, okay. So yeah, I'm midway through reading those books, and yeah, it's pretty faithful. I watched the movie first, so I'm seeing how faithful it is, and it's pretty a few differences, but yeah, amazing how they made the adaptation. I mean, I rewatched that movie just after Christmas, and I just blown away every time I watch it. I watched it at the cinema, the theater, when it first came out, and I went back. I just had to go back and see it again. I just couldn't sort of contain my love for it, and I was like, phone up my brother. I'm taking you to the cinema just so I could go and watch Scott Pilgrim again. Edgar Wright he's a national treasure in England. He's done some great sort of Brit coms. He started with directing Spaced. I think he was very young when he did that, maybe in his early 20s with Simon Pegg, and went on and did the Cornetto trilogy with Simon Pegg again. And then this was his first big budget movie opportunity, and it had a lot of effects and great sound work, and Beck working on the soundtrack. So there was a lot riding on this for Edgar Wright's career, and I think he hit the bullseye. I loved it. Like I said, I didn't have the background knowledge of the comics at the time, the graphic stories, I should say. But it worked on me. I was totally hooked. I thought it was layered, and there was a lot to see and a lot to take in, and you could watch it 2 or 3 times easy.
I agree completely. It's one of those films that's just so visually unique, yet like when you watch it and then you watch his later work, like it's a very Edgar Wright film, but it was so unique in its time. I love Scott Pilgrim. It's fantastic. The music, the costume design, the visuals, the silly homages to video games and whatnot. I love it.
Yeah, they have the Zelda music at one point, don't they? The sort of running gags. Yeah, it's very comic booky, graphic novel-y, and it really worked on me. I love there's so many small details, like I think someone bursts into coins and you see Neil in the background, like trying to eat them. And like, they could have easily not put that detail in, but someone was thinking about how to really maximize this as a comedy, and worked as a comedy, and it worked as a story.
Yeah, one of the things about that film that always gets me, though, is like nobody's relatable. Well, no, they're all relatable, but they're all kind of jerks. Like, the only reason Scott is the hero in that film is because he's less of an asshole than everybody else.
That's a good way to think about it. I mean, you sort of love him, but it does make it clear that he is an asshole.
Yeah.
The whole way he treats both of the ladies in his life is blatant assholery, and they really draw a line under it, don't they? And highlight it, but you still somehow love him. That's Michael Cera for you. You can't help it.
Well, Timothy Upton has a really good question too. He says, "What's something that Yolkboy grew up with that he can't get over here?"
That is a question, Tim. That you can't get.
Yeah.
Well, it's difficult.
Or is everything just better in the United States?
Better, no. I'll tell you, when I was young, I watched this show called The 11 O'Clock Show, and it was a kind of satire comedy, and it was only a small thing. You know, it was just a very low budget comedy, but it was a showcase for comedians. And I was thinking about this, that it launched the careers. This 11 O'Clock Show, it was like a 20-minute slot on a Thursday evening or something on a not main channel. And it launched the careers of Ricky Gervais, who made The Office.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, think of the legacy of The Office, Parks and Rec, The American Office. Office is on around the world. So Sacha Baron Cohen got his break from this comedy show, who made Borat. And Charlie Brooker, who makes Black Mirror. So that's an amazing legacy just for this small, you know, this funneled expo for comedians. But I'm sure American people have never heard it, but this was integral for all these comedies that have come out of England. So yeah, the 11 O'Clock Show.
And I guess we don't get that here in the States.
No.
Because I've never even heard of it. I mean, I've heard of all the people you listed, obviously, but...
Yeah, well, it's something that I thought wouldn't have made it to these shores, because obviously The Office and Borat are, you know, primetime things here. But
Ricky Gervais has just had, even outside of The Office, he's got a pretty significant career.
Yeah. Ricky Gervais, he's done a lot. I love The Office. We can talk about The Office if you want, because that's another nerdy thing that people like. Are you an Office fan, Stephen?
I have never watched it. There was when that show was at its peak of popularity, my living situation was not. I have kids, so I didn't have all the time in the world. It's definitely on my list of stuff to go back and get caught up on. I'm absolutely aware of it. I love Steve Carell. Now I know that's the sort of like reimagined American version.
Yeah.
So.
I think that the English Office was sort of more of a faux documentary, and they did carry that over into the American one, but it was more. It was never meant to be a real documentary, you know, the American one. But the work, the camera work, and the production of the English one was almost supposed to make you think that this was a fly on the wall thing going on. So that's Americanized. I think some of the jokes are a bit more subtle and on the English one, and a bit more obvious on the American one. So not to want to upset any of my American friends, but just the difference in the style between I find British humor a little bit more subtle and a bit more American, a bit more kind of bold. So yeah, that's highlighted in the difference between the two offices.
But I understand, being a big fan of it. We have a fairly large community group. We have a Slack group for Here Be Dragons, and a lot of my closest supporters here in the chat are in the Slack group as well. And I have been roasted many, many times for not watching The Office yet. It's definitely on the list. It's definitely high on the list. But when there's new TV shows coming out, and you've got a channel where you talk about nerdy pop culture, you've got to watch the new stuff first. You know,
it's difficult to be a nerd because you can't be on top of everything.
You're right. You can't.
When you invited me here, the first thought was, oh my God, what about the gaps in my nerd knowledge? I'm just going to have to own up to it.
Nobody gets roasted.
Batman comics. I mean, do you hate me for that?
No. Like you haven't seen The Expanse. I haven't seen The Office. We all have gaps.
Yeah.
You know, we all like different things, and that's fine.
Yeah, well, there's only so many hours in the day. You know, it's an opportunity cost in the nerd world. Do I read Dance with Dragons for the 21st time, or do I check out the new show on Netflix? Something has to give.
I'm usually going to watch the new show on Netflix when presented with that. Aemy has a question. Does Yolkboy like any animated shows?
I used to when I was young. I don't really. We were going to watch The Last Airbender. We started to watch it. We watched a few. I liked it a lot, but we didn't follow through with it. It's just one of those things that we put down. Well, that was my fault. So it's not really.
I would suggest revisiting that. You know, if you've watched the first part of The Expanse twice and couldn't get into it, like, I'm not going to push that on you. Last Airbender, the animated series, not this fake movie people will tell you exists, but actually doesn't. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I did actually enjoy. We watched probably 2 of them. It wasn't because we didn't like it we put it down. It was just because, you know, life happened and we got taken in a different direction. But I definitely want to get back. I enjoyed the style, and the setup was pretty good, I thought.
Yep, it's great. That's one of those shows that I have seen start to finish probably somewhere between 15 and 20 times. I'm not a huge animation follower either, but I know when Aemy asked the question about animated, that's what she was pointing at. That was the answer she was hoping to get. But so I'll just add my voice to hers and say, yeah, please watch The Last Airbender when you get a chance.
Yeah, I definitely want to do that. Like I said, with The Expanse, I see everyone getting all this joy from it, and I'm sort of jealous. And yeah, I'll just have to fit it in somewhere. Yeah. So at the moment, I'm watching Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Okay.
And I'm enjoying going through that because I watched some of that when I was younger, but there was many gaps. I never watched it left to right, so I'm trying to watch it left to right. And I'm enjoying the characters. Are you a Star Trek? Are you a Trekkie?
I am not a huge Trekkie, but I do enjoy it. We talked when Picard came out last year. We covered it on the channel, and I enjoyed it for the most part.
Yeah, I'm enjoying I'm on season 4 of The Next Generation, and the first 2 seasons and not so good. I think there was a writer's strike that really sort of hit season 2 very hard, and I think it was quite obvious. But by the time you get to season 4, you know, I'm really loving it. Like, every episode is good. I love Worf and the character, this trope of a guy that's from another culture. I just love that trope. You see it in other movies like The Last Samurai, the Tom Cruise one, and you see it in the Avatar, the James Cameron Avatar, when an outsider goes to another place and has to sort of integrate. I just love that dynamic. I don't know why, and I love when that theme arises with Worf. That's some of my favorite stuff. I love anything with the time travel. Are you a fan of time travel, Stephen?
Yes, I am. Depending on how it's done, you know. I'm a big fan of the closed loop, whatever you find in the here and now. If you're gonna if you're gonna time travel, the thing you did always happened already. The Well, it's the same way George R. Martin, or at least the way it's executed in the Game of Thrones TV show. Like whatever Bran does in the modern time, even though he's sort of time traveling, the effect has already happened in the past. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is another way of expressing that, where it's not creating these multiple offshoot timelines. Yeah. It's affecting the time now, but in the future we have to go back to create the past. Anyway, yes, I do like time travel.
Yeah, closed loop. That's it. So what's Arrival then? That's a closed loop, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and that's a fantastic film as well.
Yeah, I love that. It really. When a sci-fi movie comes out and it's just got something original about it and it's produced very well, there's nothing more satisfying to me. I just feel like I'm in the movie. You know, it just really sets my imagination off, and I just can't get enough of that sort of thing. When I watched Arrival, I loved every minute of it. I love the design of the aliens. What is it called? The septipods or the heptapods?
They are heptapods.
Heptapods. Depends on how many legs they've got, I guess. Yeah, the heptapods and the. Maybe I shouldn't say spoilers. I don't know what the spoiler policy is here.
I'm going to try not to spoil people on films.
Oh, sorry if I've done any of that. I
don't know that you have, but Arrival is a fantastic movie. I do agree. You know what? It's old enough. We can spoil it. It's fine. That movie is several years old. If you haven't watched it by now, like, it's not our fault that you didn't.
Yeah, well, I apologize because I don't like to give spoilers. I was just sort of speaking from the heart on something, and I didn't think about it because like you say, it's must be 5-6 years old now.
Right. But it's one of my. I mean, I love the space sci-fi with, traveling between planets and or stars and all of that stuff. But Arrival was as strange as it was a very grounded film, and I also appreciated that a lot. And it allowed it to be a lot more sort of esoteric and intellectual and psychological in its approach.
Yeah, I like the trope where the aliens come to us.
Yeah.
I mean, it raises different questions than the space thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be deep in the future. You can have the present time. That's the glory of that sort of trope. It can be right now, and it can get you thinking, well, what if something did come to us? Wow. What would we do? What would be the human way to do it? Would we reach a friendly hand out? Would we throw rocks at them?
Given what I know about humans, and every answer you can come up with would be the way someone would react.
Yes, a bit of everything.
But John is having a total freak out that we might spoil something from Arrival. So that we do not give him an aneurysm, let's Sean brings up District 9 is the best Aliens Among Us film, and I don't know if I agree that it's the best, but it's quite good. I'd have to think about it to exclude everything else. But what did you like District 9?
Yeah, I watched it. Like when it came out, so I'm pretty foggy, but I remember, it's not so subtle sort of messages, and it was pretty good. Yeah. Another good Alien Among Us is Under the Skin. Have you heard of that one?
I don't think I've seen that. No.
That's Scarlett Johansson. That's a good one. It's low budget, but does a very good job with. Sometimes this, sci-fi, you don't need all the bells and whistles. You can just do something.
Yeah,
grounded and lo-fi, and that's what it is.
I do enjoy Scarlett Johansson. I do enjoy her work. She has made a couple of science fiction films that have not lived up to my standard. You ever seen that movie Lucy?
No, I haven't.
The only thing I'll say about that is it asks some really smart questions, but it comes up with some really stupid answers. So it is definitely not her best science fiction work.
It rings a bell. Can you just give it without spoilers? Can you give me what it's about in a nutshell, just so I can?
Well, part of the premise is it's based on this idea that we only use 10% of our brain, and which is scientifically not factual at all. We use all of our brain. We just don't use all of it all of the time. But she takes some drug which is supposed to unlock 100% of her brain, and she becomes like transcendent beyond, the psychic abilities, and eventually becomes probably some sort of like complete energy being and no longer has a need for a physical form. And
so is it a bit like a superhero or a bit more sci-fi than that?
It's more science fiction than that.
Okay.
She doesn't become an avenging hero. She becomes the next evolution of whatever humans would be if we didn't need physical bodies anymore. Yeah, but I don't recommend it. As much as I love Scarlett Johansson, I do not recommend that film. Oh wow, we've been going pretty well up to this point. Y'all feel free to ask your questions for Yolkboy too. I'm having a blast over here. So I'm going to ask you about some of the stuff that I love.
Yeah.
You ever played Dungeons and Dragons, my friend? You a D&D guy at all?
So when I moved to America, I wanted to make friends. So through my wife, we knew a couple that were a Song of Ice and Fire people. So we hung out with them a bit and made friends. And I was invited to play D&D, and I started, and I must have played 2 or 3 games, and then the Corona shit happened. But I was just getting into it, and I felt the power of the game, and I felt the beauty of the design and the creativity that I never realized how creative it was. And I remember when I played my first campaign, I wanted to write. I had this urge to go and write. It just made me feel like, oh my God, I've just exercised this sort of muscle in my brain, and it's made me in touch with my creative side. And I want to write. I just want to make up some characters and some plot lines, and write stories and stuff. So I think I went home and wrote some short stories because I just felt so inspired. So that was just from one game. So unfortunately, I never tried playing a virtual game. That's it. I just played maybe twice.
Yeah, I mean, my heart breaks for the fact that your game got shut down by COVID. A lot of people's did. We definitely play over Zoom. I play basically once a week, sometimes twice a week, with several different groups, and it's my favorite pastime. I bring it up to everybody who comes on this channel because I love D&D. I'm 46 now. I think I'm 46 now, and I played my first D&D game when I was 9. And I've never really stopped. So yeah, it's not a terrible idea to try to find an online game. And the upside of that is that Kate plays in one of my games. Kate Bertinsky here. She lives in Canada. Couldn't play with her any other way. Lady Leaf Underhill plays in one of my games. She lives in New Hampshire, or not New Hampshire, Vermont. Couldn't play with her otherwise. So I highly recommend it. And she also wants to know which class and race did you play when you did get to play? Do you remember?
Yeah, I did. My first ever character that I designed, and the one I played, I don't remember the name, but he was like a lizard man.
Okay.
It was a kind of, I don't think it was from the main book. It was from a sort of companion book or something. So it was a lizard man, and I made this backstory and why he'd been sort of evicted from his own people, and now he was hanging around with humans. So I made up a little story of how he sort of was betrayed by his fellow lizard people, and now that he wanted to be with the human characters and stuff.
Yeah. I highly recommend get back to it as soon as you can. But Micah, longtime supporter over here, Micah Clark, co-host over there on the Planetos podcast. He's got a Song of Ice and Fire question for Yolkboy. What was some character opinions that have changed over your years of reading? Whether you grew to like characters more or less than you already did? I think that's a great question.
Wow. I think I initially saw Tywin on my first read through as someone that sort of gets the job done and is cruel as he needs to be and stuff. And then when I started analyzing, I just realized that he was a bit of a shit. Well, not a bit of a shit, complete shit. It sort of went over my head in the first read. There's a lot to take in, wasn't there, when you're reading, like, I was reading these books back to back. So yeah, it did escape me. And I just thought that he was, like I said, as cruel as he needed to be. And he's just playing his way. And, he's just tough because of his backstory with his father and all that stuff. And then when I came to analyze him, I was just like, this guy's the worst, man. He's just like one of the worst characters. He's just awful. So yeah, I had a big swing away from thinking Tywin was even remotely decent. Well, not decent, but
I think you arrived at the proper place, though. Yes. I agree. Tywin's kind of just the worst. Aemy says that she feels that way about Tyrion.
Yeah, certainly there's a lot of characters that I don't know if you give them a pass or you don't notice or you're just immersed in it too much, that when you come to actually scrutinize them and analyze their characters on a deeper level, some of this Tyrion stuff is just, not acceptable. Maybe the first time you read it, you're ready to give him a pass because he's this jolly character in some earlier points. But yeah, I think you got it.
Sorry. Phone call came through. I had to take care of that real quick.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. Where am I? Oh yeah, I'm talking to Yolkboy. So what are you watching right now on TV?
Can we talk about Cobra Kai?
Yes, we can. We talked about Cobra Kai on this channel 2 weeks ago.
Right. I guess I've got to be careful with spoilers, but we don't.
No.
Spoiler free.
Yeah, if you are worried about Cobra Kai spoilers,
yeah,
you know what? Let me put up a spoiler banner real quick. Let me spell spoilers correctly.
Soilers.
I think I put spoikers. Okay, so there's a spoiler banner. We're going to talk about Cobra Kai spoilers. If you care, mute. When I take the spoiler banner down, you'll know it's safe.
That's a good system, man.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so Cobra Kai, I remember hearing about Cobra Kai and I just rolled my eyes, I can just imagine myself just being like, what are they going to think of next? When I was a kid, I loved Karate Kid. I loved it, and I guess I didn't want it to be sort of sullied, and I thought that they couldn't possibly carry on this universe. And I remember when I was a kid being so into it that I went to get karate lessons, and I had about 3 lessons, and I was like, this isn't Mr. Miyagi. This is boring, man. I realized I wasn't going to be the Karate Kid. But anyway, so fast forward, I did not think at 40 years of age, Karate Kid and Mr. Miyagi were going to come back into my life. From the first episode, I just wanted to binge it. I'm not usually a big binger, but I just didn't want to put it down. I felt like I just watched 5 minutes because I enjoyed it so much. It felt like I'd been watching it for 5 minutes, and it's half an hour show. I love the whole setup and the dynamics they've set up. They have a wonderful mastery of sort of parallels and quite classic writing techniques that are obviously from very accomplished writers. I don't know what their writing room is like, who's in it, but they really know what they're doing, these people that are writing Cobra Kai, for sure. They didn't sort of get any old person on board. This new franchise has been thought out quite thoroughly, I think.
I agree completely. I kind of love the show myself. I started with it way back in season 1 when it was on YouTube Premium, YouTube Red, it was called back then. But I think I had the same initial reaction you did. They're making 34 years later, they're making a Karate Kid TV show with the original actors, and it's going to be on YouTube. And I'm like, how hard can I roll my eyes? They might literally roll out of my head. I was like, this is going to be awful. But when it came out, initial reviews are like, it's actually really good. So I watch it and I'm like, oh, you know what? It actually is really good.
Yeah, who could have guessed? I mean, it just goes to show if you've got a decent sort of universe and you've got good writers, anything's possible. And I thought that I just rewatched the season 2, the climactic scene in the final episode of season 2. They just have this huge fight, and it's supposed to be quite serious, but also there's almost like a Jackie Chan slapstick feel to it, where the whole school, even the teachers, are getting involved. Everyone's getting involved. It's just chaos erupts, and just when you think it's over, they go on for another 5 minutes, like throwing each other through the trophy cabinet and all kinds of shit. I was loving it, but yeah, that was a memorable scene, right, Stephen?
Yeah, it was. It does exist in a place that is not our world. I don't know that things would get to the point that they got to in the show without some kind of police getting involved very heavily, but I'm okay with them living in a slightly altered version of reality where giant karate fights can happen in school, because it definitely makes for an interesting story. And I was surprised at how much heart is in that show.
Yeah, there's a lot of heart. There's a lot of redemption. There's a lot of people making mistakes, like I said, and they're looking for forgiveness. And characters are grey, and they can change from the hero to the villain and then back again at the drop of the hat. And that's because the writing room know what they're doing. And yeah, sometimes some of the dynamics really remind me of Star Wars, like the father stuff, those kind of tropes, the trying to impress the father, and Darth Vader almost came into my mind in some of those scenes. And who is the guy that's taken over Cobra Kai, the bad guy?
John Kreese.
Kreese, man, he is amazing. I don't know how old he is, but his sort of gravitas and presence is awesome. He's such a great villain, and learning his backstory was really entertaining and really convincing, because it's obviously retconned, and they've retconned it so well. It just makes perfect sense. The story of Cobra Kai, dating back to a traumatized soldier in Vietnam. Wow, to me, it was perfectly done.
So I just Googled him. The actor is called Martin Kove, and it says this is kind of wild. It has his birthday written as born 1945/1946. So I guess he's somewhat tight-lipped about his birth date, but that makes him 74 or 75 years old. So,
well, he's still convincing as a badass, and like I said, he still has a menacing physical presence, which you wouldn't expect of an actor of that age. But you really believe that you wouldn't want to mess with this guy.
You're right. He carries not just the his acting is great, but physically, you're right. Oh, I'm going to sneeze here in just a second. It's getting stage fright. But you're right. Like, I thought it was really good the way William Zabka and Ralph Macchio were able to carry their physical scenes. Although William Zabka does a much better job of that than Ralph Macchio, in my opinion. But Martin Kove, 70 some odd years old, and is convincing as somebody who can kick anybody's butt in the room.
Yeah. Do you happen to know how many seasons it's going to run for?
I don't know how many. I know that they are working on season 4 right now. Like, I think they're in production right now. And I kind of hope that they end it at 4. I don't want them to
I feel like it's sort of funneling towards a kind of natural conclusion, and that I'd rather they ended it well and didn't sort of kind of try and bleed something dry because it's become so fashionable. I'd rather have an appropriate sort of natural ending.
I agree completely. Are we done talking about Cobra Kai?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yay, spoiler banner gone. So, folks, we're getting close-ish to the end, a little over 20 minutes left. People are noticing my shirt again. Yes, if you want yours, go to joemagician.threadless.com to get your very own Ass Waff t-shirt. I love it.
That's very sexy.
It is.
Ass waffle. I like it.
Ass waffle, yeah. Peach waffles are fantastic also. And not that there was a lot to do, but this is designed by a friend of the channel, San Rixian. Lovely human being. So yeah, go get your own.
Stephen, I knew this would happen. Someone asked me a question earlier and I was drawing a blank, but now I've thought of something that we could talk about.
Okay.
Someone asked me if I like any animation, and I forgot about my love for Rick and Morty. Are you a fan of Rick and Morty?
I have watched the first season. I enjoyed it well enough. I was not a huge fan. I think it's just because Rick is such an asshole, you know?
Yeah.
But it was good, and I understand the draw of it. I do. And that is Dan Harmon, who made Community, and I am a very big fan of Community. So,
his skill for dialogue, and also kind of using tropes and really science fiction. He does so many great science. There's so many great science fiction ideas in Rick and Morty that will probably be overlooked because it's a sort of comedy cartoon type of thing. But for real, there's some seriously great concept work for sci-fi in Rick and Morty, I think. And that must come from Dan Harmon.
I think so. Dan Harmon is part of the reason I think Community worked so well is because he's a nerd about his television watching. And I'm sure that carries over to Rick and Morty as well. He loves the science stuff. He loves the tongue in cheek. He loves taking tropes and flipping them on their heads, and it's I love it.
Yeah, I enjoy recognizing tropes. That's something that A Song of Ice and Fire has instilled in me. I can recognize tropes a lot easier than previously, and just studying these books has certainly taught me. You know, George uses tropes quite obviously. You know, you can recognize them quite easily, and now I see them in other media, and I'm like, well, I guess I've got George to thank for that one.
Yeah. So Mace to Mary, good buddy of mine, got her own podcast, Learned Hands podcast. If you're not listening to that, you're missing out. But she's got a good question. She wants to know the best and worst foods you've had since moving to the United States.
I like buffalo wings. I never had buffalo sauce. So I like experiencing new foods. So anything just slightly that I haven't had before, I enjoy. So yeah, buffalo wings, I like that. But earlier we were talking about barbecue. That is definitely my favorite. I'm always saying to my wife every like Friday night, hey, it's barbecue time, and you don't need to cook tonight. We can just get barbecue. I kind of frame it like that. Like, hey, we don't need to slave over the oven tonight because we can just order in some barbecue. And I always have pork ribs and dirty rice, it's called. It's got meat in it. And
oh, yeah. I'm very familiar with dirty rice.
oh, yeah. And like grits or black-eyed peas, that sort of thing. That's the sort of, we got a smokehouse here, so it's pretty good. It's probably not up to your standards, but for a state that is not known for it, I think we've got at least a good place close by, a nice smokehouse. So that's my best. The worst food, my wife made me try canned bread.
I've never even had that. It sounds
bread in a can, and she said, "Oh, maybe I had some of this when I was a kid and stuff." So my stepdaughter and our little cousins came over, and we opened a tin of bread, and we tried that, and yeah, that's the worst thing, man. That's even worse than Slim Jim.
So Mary says, like biscuits? No, it's like literally like you would find a soup can and you open it up and it's just a loaf of bread in there, yes?
Yeah, bread in a can, it's called.
It sounds really terrible. I've never had it. I've never been brave enough to try it.
Well, I would keep it that way, Stephen.
All right. So is there something that you used to get in England, like food-wise, that you miss?
Well, in England, the most popular takeout is Indian.
Okay.
And I don't know, obviously America's huge, and I am in the woods here, so I don't have access. I'm not in a city or anything, so I don't live in a diverse place. But there's no Indian even close to me, and I haven't had that food. I haven't been able to go home since COVID, so I haven't had that food for years now. And I used to like it. Very, very spicy food, and the dishes and the flavors are very unique. You know, the flavors of Indian food are not something that you see it in replicated in other cultures. Very, very unique. And yeah, like I said, that was the primary takeaway for us in England. Okay. So yeah.
Well, I'm sure that there is some place to get good Indian food, but the reason you can't is more down to where you live.
Exactly, yeah.
Outside the city. Okay.
Yeah.
We're in the last 15 minutes or so, y'all, so get your questions in. I assume that when you moved here, it was not your first trip to the States. Is that accurate?
No, obviously in the course of the relationship I have with my now wife, I had to come over and see if it was going to work, because even though you meet someone on the internet, you really have to be in the same room with someone to see if you've sort of got that, you know, if the chemistry from your online relationship is convertible in real life. So I did come here and spent time here and got to know my wife in person, and we did sort of go on road trips and have some romance there, and it sort of made up for the fact that we were apart a lot of the time, just speaking on FaceTime. For like 4 years we did this, and it was just, we couldn't do it anymore. So
was
I'm glad I'm here now.
Your first trip to the US then was to meet up with Lady Gwen?
Yeah, actually, I did come to Disneyland, the one in Florida. Was that Disney World? I forget.
It's Disney World in Florida.
Disney World. I went to Disney World in Florida when I was a young kid. I remember that I came with my young brother, and he was like 7 years old, and he thought the people in the costumes were real, you know, characters. Mm-hmm. Like he met the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and he really thought he was meeting them. And one day he was getting an autograph from Goofy, and in his peripheral vision, he saw another Goofy walk past. And he said that, you know, it sort of messed with his head. How come there's two Goofies? And he said he couldn't figure it out. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Scott W. just says he really enjoyed getting to hang out with both of you at Ice and Fire Con. And I'm so jealous because I was really looking forward to getting to know you and your lady wife at Ice and Fire Con last year. But next time there is one, that's where we're going to actually meet.
Yeah, it's 2022.
Yeah, they've already.
I hope you're there, Stephen. And if you're watching this, come along and meet me, Stephen, and a whole bunch of Song of Ice and Fire nerds.
Yep. Kelly, the jaded redhead, she's got a question. She is the biggest Anglophile that I know, and she just wants to know, what area of England are you from? Like, okay. What's your address?
No, so I was from the southwest, and I lived on the coast in a coastal town. I think you might call it a city here because your definition is different. But when Lady Gwyn visited, she said we would call it a city. But yeah, I lived a coastal life in a sort of semi-idyllic place in the southwest, away from the hustle and bustle of London, although I have spent a lot of time in the cities and in London.
So like Surrey?
No, further on the peninsula of the southwest, like
Cornwall.
Right down.
So Cornwall?
Yeah, in that ballpark.
Okay, cool. Well, I've never been there, but I play a lot of video games where I try to take over the world. Yeah. So it teaches me a lot of geography that way.
Yeah, it was nice when my wife came to visit and I was able to, they say you never go to the tourist attractions where you live because you just take them for granted. Like my cousin lives in Paris. He said he's never been to the Eiffel Tower, never climbed it. And it was the same thing. Like my wife came to visit and I was suddenly very interested in exploring all the surrounding places and going on adventures.
Yeah. So at least you didn't live, well, but you did live in England proper.
Yep.
So at least you didn't live in Wales.
Oh, well, yeah. Wales is pretty beautiful, though.
No, Wales is the worst.
Oh, you think it's the worst? Why do you think it's the worst?
Wales. I'm picking a fight with somebody in the chat specifically. It's an ongoing gag that I hate Wales for really stupid reasons. Yeah, see, there it is. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate you. Okay, we're about 10 minutes from the end, so I always like to kind of wrap up, let the chat know, y'all, we're coming to the end. Get this your last chance to get some questions in. I think Kelly is cursing at me in Welsh right now, probably. And I will, okay, what's my beef against Wales? It turns out it's full of humans, not actual whales. They got a dragon on their flag, but no dragons in their country. Like, it's just false advertising all over the place. Aemy Blackfyre is going to ask you, what color lightsaber would you have?
I like the dark saber that was we saw. Yeah, I think that's the coolest one. Does that drink in the light sort of thing, like Melisandre's ruby?
It's a perfect answer. I'm a boring green lightsaber guy. But I'm here for an answer of dark saber.
Who has the green one?
Lots of people have green ones. Luke Skywalker has
thing. Yeah, I don't keep notice. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the Luke Skywalker lightsaber is green. So I like to end up with a kind of a bit of a silly couple of questions. So let's assume, Mr. Boy, that we're making a film about your life.
Yeah.
Who would direct it? Who would star as Yolkboy? And what do you think would be the title of that film?
Oh, wow. This is right out of the left field. Stephen.
I know. I love this. I love this series of questions because it's so weird.
I think.
But let's start with who would play Yolkboy.
Oh man, I don't know. Who do I look like?
It's not somebody who necessarily looks like you. It's somebody who can capture your essence.
Yeah.
And if you want me to throw some, I think Ricky Gervais actually would be an excellent choice.
Yeah, he's a bit older though, isn't he?
He is. Makeup can do a lot these days.
I think someone more attractive, Stephen. Thank you.
Okay, Brad Pitt. He's a little older too.
Brad Pitt. Yeah, it could be the story of, the podcaster's journey. It could be called. Right. Directed by David Lynch or David Fincher, one of those two.
But not Stanley Kubrick.
No.
Aemy with Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, yeah, you've got it. Aemy, thank you. Now we're talking. Ricky Gervais, what the?
Pedro would be nice. Somebody who could capture your sense of humor and whatnot.
Yeah, I think he could pull off anything. That's why he's in everything at the moment.
Right. And what do you think would be a good name for the Yolkboy movie?
What I said before. Podcaster's journey.
Podcaster's journey.
Just podcaster, like David Lynch, just David Fincher, podcaster. He would call it, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think you're right. It
would be the story of a keyboard warrior that just one day wanted his voice to be heard.
I think we've solved it. I can't wait to have Lady Gwyn come on and find out who is going to be your on-screen love interest.
Oh, yes.
I think it'd be very, very fun to hear that. Potter is this is my friend Potter Ruan. He's Irish guy, and he is our pet Irish troll. He loves to make jokes about Howard the Duck. Have you ever seen this film, Howard the Duck? Heard of it?
I saw it when I was a kid, and I thought it was funny, but like I really was a kid, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I think I was at primary school, so I was probably like 10 or something. So I can't remember, but I remember it was pretty odd.
Yeah, it is a very weird movie. Ridiculous Ed Tollett, good friend of the channel, asks or says he just got home from work, but my question for Yolkboy is, because I heard you mention several video games earlier, what is your favorite game or game series?
Okay, so I already talked about Zelda. Zelda's my favorite, but let me talk about another one that I like. I love the Civilization series.
Oh.
I think that it's just takes you through history and teaches you how we, accrued all the knowledge that we have, how it came about, what the tree of learning was like, and how do we learn how to smith metal, and it teaches you that stuff, so you're really learning and how to manage a civilization and diplomacy, and you get to sort of play gods. So this nerd ego that we've all got, we can just sort of let it off the leash for a few days and have a game and be king of the world. But it teaches you a lot about sort of history and just how we came to be the way we are with technology and international relations.
It's a fantastic answer. I've been playing Civilization as long as the game's been around. I was playing Civ 6. I can't remember if it was this morning or yesterday morning, but recently was playing some Civilization 6. It gives us Civ 6 is responsible for, or not Civ 6, but Civilization in general is responsible for one of my favorite sort of like gaming memes about Gandhi and how he basically will at some point start nuking the entire world. The most pacifist person turns into because of a coding error in the old game.
I know it. We're both Civ nerds. We know the lore of this game.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's a fantastic one. Do you play Civ 6?
No, I didn't play Civ 6 because when it came out, I did not want to be distracted from what I was doing. And then I moved here and I was like, I don't really, I don't want to play too many games, especially the ones that sort of take up 2 or 3 days at a time. So I just always had it on the back burner. But I was Civ 4. That was my favorite. That's the one I really loved. When you spread the religions, that's the one I played many times. Civ 5 as well, but Civ 4 was my favorite. What is Civ 6 good? Is
Civ 6 is great. It's very similar to Civ 5 in its layout. It's the hexagon map, not a grid. One of the biggest changes in Civ 6, though, is that instead of building everything within the one hex occupied by your city, you literally have to put districts that will consume the whole space. So I'm going to build my industrial district here and my science district over there and my holy site over there, and then you build buildings within each of those. So planning your city layout is a huge part of Civ 6 that was never a part of any other game of the previous games.
Excellent. I remember in the 4 and the 5, just like in real life, I don't really like conflict. I don't like to get in fights with people. Just in general, I shy away from. I just don't enjoy it. So that permeated into my strategy, and I just always played for culture victory. I just always avoided war. Like I'd do anything to avoid, you know, Genghis Khan attacking me was like my worst nightmare. It totally ruined my whole game because I needed the perfect run of peace and prosperity to, you know, achieve the cultural strategy that I was going for.
Yeah, I'm a science victory guy myself.
Oh, is that going to the moon?
Yeah, or like colonize Alpha Centauri or something like that.
Yeah. I remember in one of the games, I think it was number 3, you could go to Alpha Centauri, and then you started the same game, but it was just different graphics, but you just started the whole thing over again.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't see any other questions in the chat. We've covered every topic you can think of up to this point, and we really are right here at the 2-hour mark. So, yeah, Mary, it's a fantastic game. Civilization is fun. I will say this, though. Civ 4, still my favorite, too. I haven't played it in a while, but...
it would probably be quite jarring to go back and play it after you've played Civ 6, and it'd probably give you a headache. But at the time, all things normalized, I think it had the best gameplay.
Yeah. I agree. I think that is the game that sucked up more hours of my life than literally any other game I've played. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2,000 hours plus or something stupid like that. Potter says he's missed most of the chat, unfortunately, but has Yolkboy heard of the glory of the Expanse? We talked about it earlier. I'm not going to hurt your feelings, Potter, so we won't bring it up again. Oh, yeah. Nessie wants to know, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, that's way too philosophical for me. I'll stay away from that one.
Yeah.
No, I'd say no. Just okay. No. It's not a sandwich. Is different. I don't even know what words to use, but no, a hot dog is a hot dog.
Okay, well, you're wrong, but I forgive you.
Thanks, Nessie.
But yeah, thanks everyone for coming. I think we have asked the question of what's a hill you're willing to die on. All right, Laura, you're going to be the last one, I think. What is of all the hills in the world, what is the one hill you are most willing to die on?
I think Godfather 1 is much better than Godfather 2.
Okay.
Is that daring, or is that? I mean, everybody says Godfather 2 is the ultimate movie or whatever, but I much prefer the first one.
There you go. I know that there's quite a few cinephiles in the chat, and I'm sure you're going to spark a whole debate on this topic. But yeah, so thanks everyone for coming. Godfather 1 better than Godfather 2. You heard it here first. I'm not willing to argue that point. I love both of those films. They're fantastic. We will agree that Godfather 3 is terrible, though.
Yeah, that's where we can meet.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming out. We're going to call it here. I got him to agree to 2 hours, which is already a long time to just sit and answer questions about yourself. But Yolkboy, thank you so much for doing this. I had a blast getting to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, I also had a blast. So likewise, thank you for inviting me onto your channel, and thanks to everyone that's watched and asked questions and participated. I didn't enter the chat because I like to sort of pay attention. I'm very easily distracted. I really wanted to focus on what you were saying to me, so that's why I didn't join in. But I hope you had a good time in the chat, guys.
Yeah, I think they had a good time. You're a very witty man, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, once again, Yolkboy, tell us what you got going on over there at Radio Westeros. What's coming up next?
Yeah, Radio Westeros will be doing a live stream on House Dane with Monaro Geek TV 2 weeks yesterday. So on Saturday in 2 weeks yesterday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And we'll also be doing a new Primer episode all about the Stormlands. So what's going to happen to Aegon, or Fagon, as a lot of people know him by.
You mean Aegon the Sixth?
What's going to happen with John Connington? What's going to happen with Arianne? All those plot lines converging. Should be a good one.
Right on. I look forward to that. Monaro has been a guest on this channel quite a few times. She's a fantastic creator in her own right. Glad to see her going to be on Radio Westeros to talk about some stuff. And if you enjoy what we did here, come back next week and we'll be doing something completely different. We'll be talking about the last few episodes of season 5 of The Expanse. The finale comes out Tuesday, and we'll be discussing that next Sunday, the season 5 wrap up. I hope to see you there. Beyond that, just if you haven't hit the like or you're not subscribed, I would appreciate it if you did both of those things. If you hit the like button and you subscribe to the channel. But yeah, that's it. So thank you, Yolkboy, once again. But until next time, everyone, you know what it is. Peace and be excellent to each other.